This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet. Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media. This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
It's not about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
The Ouija board has existed for centuries. It is used to communicate with the dead.
If there's a presence here, please make yourself known. This is a joke. Oh my God. It's not even real, okay? It's just a gun.
Ouija.
We're saying goodbye!
Rated PG-13.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Your host will be Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and Countermand Amendment. Our special legislator guests will be discussing important issues in their states that relate to federal encroachment on states' rights. The nonpartisan Article 5 single-issue countermand amendment can remedy many states' issues peacefully without the consent of Congress, the courts, or the executive branch. We will reclaim our constitutional republic soon. The nonpartisan countermand amendment is the missing piece of the Article 5 puzzle. Our nation is coming apart at the seams, so we are countermanding.
George Washington was the first president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolution, and one of the founding fathers of the United States. George Washington said the following: "Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly implore His protection and favor. Now, one other quote before we start our program. Noah Webster, Jr., who died in 1843, was an American lexicographer, textbook pioneer, English language spelling reformer, political writer, editor, and prolific author. He also has been called the father of American scholarship and education. Noah Webster said, now listen to this, folks, the religion which has introduced civil liberty is the religion of Christ and his apostles. To this we owe our free constitutions of government. Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. My name is Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. Roundtable discussions with state legislators and community leaders center around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of them safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum. We are not here to back our guests into a corner. We encourage serious discussions of issues important to our guests and their states. What are some of the subjects? Taxation, criminal law, energy policies, health care, social issues, federal land grabs, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, the EPA, the BLM, the IRS, the DOJ, and much more. You will learn how to protect your enumerated rights in the Constitution and how the states and their citizens can identify, define, and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendment. And they can do it peacefully and permanently. Roundtable members tonight are Sandy Toth, our Executive Coordinator and Georgia State Director, Mike Coons, National Director and Alaska State Director, and Kelli D Gordon, National Coordinator, Texas State Director and Producer. We now have 15 sponsored states for the nonpartisan Article 5 Countermand Amendment. That in itself, folks, is a miracle. We could have a total of 20 sponsored states for the amendment in 30 days. We have had the honor of meeting many of the country's leading legislators on the State Legislators Roundtable. I see these state legislators more as statesmen than politicians. They are trying to find solutions to the many problems their citizens face, especially as they relate to encroachment by the federal government. The State Legislators Roundtable has been growing. We have become one of the fastest growing radio talk shows on the internet. To learn more about the Countermand Amendment, go to countermands.us. That's with an S, countermands.us. Also, call your friends, relatives, and associates. Tell them to tune into this show tonight. Tell them to go to cprworldwidemedia.com/live-radio. They will also be able to participate in our online chat. Our roundtable can also be heard on pnntalkradio.com. Now, folks, tonight we have a special guest in the second hour, Senator Hammond from the state of Nevada. I am looking forward to that discussion and that time of sharing. I want to hear more about some of the problems that the state of Nevada has, and especially in light of the Bundy Ranch episode that took place several months back, and also the fact that 88% of Nevada land is controlled by the federal government, if not owned outright. And we have a lively discussion to look forward to, so stay with us. In the meantime, we're going to take this first hour and tell you about what we are doing in the state legislatures, how we got to so many states that are sponsoring us already, and what we're planning to do over the next 5 months in order to help the state legislators in their legislative committees get this amendment adopted, the application for the amendment adopted in their states. So before we go into the details of some of that, I'd like to ask Mike Coons, our National Director, to share some about what he has been accomplishing in the state legislatures with lining up these sponsors for the Countermand Amendment. Mike, could you come on in and share with us now?
Yes, thank you, Charles. One of the one of the biggest honors I have as national director is to be contacting these state legislators across the nation. And some of them are hard to get hold of. Some of them you have to go through their staff, but you do get hold of them. And when you get hold of the really good ones, the citizen legislators, the statesmen, the state women, you've really grabbed hold of somebody that you can really reach out. You can call a friend, not just somebody that's in a state legislature, but truly a friend. These people are down to earth. They haven't drank the Kool-Aid at DC. So that said, Charles mentioned earlier, we have now 15 states. And I'm proud to say that the 15th state was the great state of Texas, Kelli D Gordon, our producer's home state. They came in kind of late because the great state of Alaska was the first state to sponsor. Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Kansas, Louisiana, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, and West Virginia are the 15 states. We are strongly looking at, hopefully tonight, with Nevada would be our 16. We've got strong probabilities in about 5 other states, maybe 6. And as time goes on, we gain more. The beauty of this amendment and the beauty of this show, and I can't thank CPR Worldwide Media enough for having us onto their program, is that when we talk to these legislators on the phone and invite them to the show, I do give them a prep. They do answer a lot of questions. But when they come to this show and they hear this from Charles and they hear this from us and they've read the amendment, they get this. They get this quickly, and the strength of their convictions are strong. And we normally, a lot of times, I'd say 80 to 85% of the times, just one show and we have a sponsor. So I want to thank CPR Media, Worldwide Media, for having us on and giving us this avenue so that we can reach out to a lot of state legislators across this nation. And I really want to thank all the friends that I have made through all those states that I've talked to, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that I'm going to get to know and get to understand and get to help make this happen. Back to you, Charles.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that input and that insightful information. Now, Sandy, did you want to share anything before I get into my itinerary?
Just that, good evening, everyone.
This is Sandy Toth, folks. She is our executive coordinator and state director in Georgia. Go ahead, Sandy.
I feel like I want to just hit everybody over the head and tell them to get on board with what we're doing. It is such a critical response to help us get straightened out. I remember a number of years ago when they started the light bulb situation and they were outlawing the incandescents and phasing them out, and they wanted us to use these stupid pigtail looking light bulbs and trying to sell it to us as so much better, except they were dangerous. They had mercury in them and you needed a hazmat team if you broke one. And then I watched the factories that were here in the United States that made incandescent bulbs moving out. And guess where they went? Mexico. And they're making incandescent bulbs down there. And where are light bulbs coming from? China. And it just so impressed me as something so absolutely stupid for our federal government to do. And I got so annoyed, I started hoarding light bulbs. And I have 2 shelves in the utility room full of incandescent bulbs because I refused to use the other kind. So I hoarded them. I kept buying every time I went to the store. And people go in and say, gee, you think you got enough light bulbs? Yeah, I think until I die I got enough light bulbs in there. But that was just the start. That was the beginning thing that really started getting me so aggravated about what was going on in the country. And then little by little, I kept seeing more and more things. And so many things that, you forget about them. I bet a lot of people don't even think of the light bulb issue anymore. But everything has been taking away our rights. And that's why the countermand is so important. Because we need to get those rights back. We need to get the federal government back in its place. I have watched and I've listened on all these broadcasts about the state legislators complaining about what the federal government is doing. You go to the western states and land grabs are a big issue. And meanwhile, our resources are not being used. The federal government keeps all the mineral rights, and they really belong to the people. The Constitution says the federal government can maintain a small amount of land in a state to be used for like a military installation or some kind of public works. But that's all. They're not supposed to own millions of acres and control them and keep them away from the people. And then you listen to people talking about Obamacare. And the more we learn about what has happened, the more we realize how the federal government tried to make fools out of everyone. Good old Mr. Gruber calling all the voters stupid. And, you go on, Dodd-Frank has tied up the banks, all the EPA regulations. We have a president that gets up there and talks about, he wants to create jobs and everything. And meanwhile, he's got EPA regulations going down the pipeline that are killing the coal industry. Now, like most people, yes, I want a cleaner environment. But it's not going to happen overnight. We're not magically going to be able to turn all our cars into, a solar vehicle that will run on the sun's rays. It's not feasible. We don't have the technology. But we can clean up what we are able to use now, our oil, our natural gas, and our coal, and use it wisely and help our economy and give people jobs. So in other words, I've listened to our administration talking out of both sides of their faces, and I just get so upset when I think about all the things we're losing in the process. And that's why, folks, the countermand is so, so important. I would like all of you to make a concerted effort. I know the holidays are coming up, but in January, we're going to need everyone's help out there to call their legislators and ask them to support the Countermand Amendment. Call up your state representatives, call your state senators, email them, leave messages with their assistants, but help them and encourage them to get off the ground with this so we can start taking our country back. Okay, Charles, I'll quit now.
Thank you. Appreciate that input. And that is helpful to understanding the urgency of the hour. and also how important the countermand is for reclaiming our constitutional republic. Now I'm going to give a few minutes to Kelli Gordon, our national coordinator and also state director in Texas. Kelli, why don't you come on in and share what's on your mind tonight?
Thank you, Charles. Well, Sandy's right. I mean, it is, we are in dire straits, truly, so many different situations. And the power of the countermand addresses so many of them. It's a beautiful, brilliant piece of legislation. What I'm noticing, talking to our honorable state legislators across the country, is I'm picking up on some excitement where they're starting to imagine the possibilities, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because the countermand truly addresses so many different issues. Like Sandy said, the EPA rules and regulations that are strangling our industries, the federal land grabs that are so unconstitutional. The federal government has made it, has turned land theft into an art. They're wanting to rescue every kind of thing, including invasive species. Remember the representative from Missouri said they were trying to, protect invasive species in order to
Yes, I remember.
control the land. And like Sandy said, they're only allowed 1 to 2% of any one state. So how dare they tell Alaska that they control 67%, or Nevada 88. Was it Nevada or Utah? But I mean, yeah, all to the west of the Mississippi, it's just overreach. It's Obamacare. That's insane. That is not even legal. As far as I can tell, that's not even legal. But I am picking up on an excitement with our legislators, and they're starting to understand that we can team up. We can once again be the United States and get a hold of our bloated federal government and bring them back down to size, because we are the true masters of our government. Without the states, there would be no federal government. And they need to remember that. Like Sandy said, they have forgotten their place. And that Countermand Amendment can bring them to heel, bring them to bay peacefully without having to raise arms. But yeah, I'm all for the countermand. I wish everyone would take a few minutes, go visit our website, countermands.us, look at that countermand amendment. It's a brilliant piece of legislation. It's fewer than 400 words and 8 clauses, and it can do so much with 30 states signing a countermand to Obamacare, saying, no, we don't want that. Federal land grabs, no, we don't need that. EPA regulations, rulings, no, we don't need that. And also, once we get this countermand into place, we're going to have an enforcement clause where if the federal government isn't going to do their job, which I personally don't have faith in the federal government at this time, if they're not going to do their job, then the state's going to go ahead and step in, and they're going to enforce whoever it was that violated that article, the countermand. But I guess that's all I've got to say for now, Charles. And I have hope, I have vision, and my imagination is fired up when I think of all the things that our state legislators are going to be able to do with that countermand. Once they know how to use it, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Well, there's one more thing that you have, and that is fervor. I mean, the fact is that you obviously are persuaded and convicted that we can actually reclaim our constitutional republic with this countermand amendment, and that's encouraging to me.
The countermand amendment is wonderful, but we also need to get the process, the method of the actual Article 5 down. And that's where your delegate resolution comes in, which is the missing piece of the puzzle. This is what is going to control and define the convention and the delegates. That countermand amendment being pre-approved, the delegate resolution being pre-approved, that's going to cut down so many headaches when everyone steps into that chamber for the discussion. That our state legislators need to know what those delegates are in there to do, and the countermand amendment is sitting on the table in front of them, and our state legislators know what's sitting on the table in front of the delegates. The delegates are bound to the state legislatures.
Absolutely. And you're right on target. And the delegate resolution is the way to make sure that state legislatures retain their sovereignty and their deliberative status under Article 5. I'll talk about more of that in the second half hour. But right now, I want to just bring to the attention of our audience some thoughts. First of all, did you know that the Countermand Amendment will rescind executive orders, such as the recent one legalizing 5 million plus illegal immigrants? Do you realize that with the Countermand Amendment, we can rescind that executive order, even though it would be retroactive? That's incredible, folks. We can stop the application of unconstitutional executive orders that deny American citizens their status as sovereign voters and citizens within their states. Second, did you know that federal court decisions that made traditional marriage illegal can be rescinded? Recently in North Carolina, we had a constitutional amendment that was approved by the citizens, and it was for the purpose of saying that traditional marriage is the only relationship between a man and a woman that the state will recognize as a legal union. And here comes one federal judge just a couple months ago, and he said that this was not the case, that's unconstitutional. Now, I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but he did. Now, we can rescind that judge's decision. We can rescind Supreme Court decisions. Did you know that the Supreme Court's decision in Roe versus Wade was a decision that actually amended the United States Constitution without ratification by the states? That's an incredible problem. And yet at the same time, we can go now with the Countermand Amendment and say, look, folks, you went too far. You've cost us 50 million children who have been murdered in the womb, and we want to stop it. And we want our families preserved, our tax base preserved, we want our nation preserved. Now, I'm going to have to go here to a break, and I want to close this session with the following comments. The State Legislators Roundtable can be heard on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on cprworldwidemedia.com/live-radio. To learn more about the Countermand Amendment, go to countermands.us. You can also order an autographed copy of my new book, Countermand Amendment, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle. Go to countermands.us and you'll be able to order one on the left. They haven't been published yet, but we're just a few weeks away, and you will be given an autographed copy by donating $20 for each book. This will help us in our travel itinerary that I will be talking about in the next segment. We have to take a short break for station identification and to hear from our CPR sponsors.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet.
My name is Christopher Perkins, Captain, United States Marine Corps. I spent 9 years in the Marines and led a team in Al-Ramadi, Iraq that risked its lives daily. Today, I'm a managing director at Citi, where I oversee a global team that provides safeguards for the $700 trillion derivatives industry.
Veterans, many of them have the right skills to be great bankers. And when they come in, they know how to make decisions, they know how to take risks, they know how to multitask. All of those things make them really great colleagues.
Just like we would go out onto the streets of Iraq, we would do an analysis of what risk we're taking and thinking about ways to mitigate it. It's no different here.
That makes them extremely valuable, and that's why we want them here helping our clients.
This industry requires our clients' trust. It requires a high degree of integrity. And so, just like the Marine Corps, your reputation is what it is, and your word is very important.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Ouija board has existed for centuries. It is used to communicate with the dead.
If there's a presence here, please make yourself known. This is a joke. Oh my God. It's not even real, okay?
Ouija.
We're saying goodbye!
Rated PG-13.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks. This is Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We are going to be discussing in this second half hour an itinerary that we are planning for the next nearly 5 months for the purpose of visiting state legislatures at the state capitals around the country. We expect to be visiting as many as 48 and 49 with Alaska with our state director up there. So you're going to learn a lot. This is something that is critical to the direction of our amendment and at the same time to the states themselves. I'm always impressed when the state legislators talk with me and respond by saying, we didn't know that we could do this. We didn't know that we had sovereignty in the legislatures. Now understand this, sovereignty means that they can do things that they don't need someone else's permission to do. They don't need Congress's permission to amend the Constitution under Article 5. They don't need the Supreme Court's permission. They don't need the executive's permission or the regulatory agencies. They just decide what they want to do. And they can do it in a safe way as long as they retain the deliberative status of being able to have a pre-approved text for the Countermand Amendment. In addition to that, when they send those delegates to the convention, they do so with a delegate resolution in a contract form between the delegates, binding them to specific instructions that they must follow, including voting on the Countermand Amendment, which was pre-approved. Once 26 states agree to that delegate resolution, then what happens is the convention will be safe, it'll be quick, maybe no more than 7 days, and it will be successful. Now, I expect that we're going to have 30 or more states with the delegate resolution adopted, simply because it's the way to protect the state sovereignty and to keep the convention from becoming mayhem. Now, there is no such thing as a constitutional convention under Article 5. I want you to understand that. Contrary to what you hear from a number of sources, there is no option under Article 5 for a constitutional convention. Now, the states do have the authority under Article 5 to change that, but right now, if they don't change it, they are restricting themselves to proposing amendments. That's what the Amendment Convention is about. That's why the Countermand Amendment is an amendment convention, not a constitutional convention. We only had one constitutional convention, that was in 1787, and that was for an entirely different purpose. It was to create a new document, a document that would govern a new nation. They knew that the Articles of Confederation had failed. They were in mayhem. They couldn't raise taxes. They couldn't amend the Articles. There was a whole host of issues that had to be addressed. And so they got the permission from the Continental Congress as well as from the legislatures to look at the Articles of Confederation in a way whereby a different document or an amendment to that document could be realized that would actually form a different body of constitutional requirements and laws within the states. So now you have that constitutional convention. Its first order of priority was to establish sovereignty, and they did that. They said 1 vote per state. At another time we can talk about how they did that, but the fact is 1 vote per state was critical. and they won. The smaller states won. The bigger states wanted it by population. Well, if the bigger states had won, that convention would have been a democracy rather than a republic. You see, within the states, you have voting rights by the citizens. That is a democracy. That's good. You and I can go to the polls in our state and vote for candidates and have our vote count as one vote, and the population then determines the issues and the candidates that are on the ballot. But in a republic, you can't confine the republic to a democracy, because then you deny the right of each state to have equal status under the Constitution and in Article 5. So you have to have a republic. If we lose this republic, we will not be able to restore our constitutional republic. We just won't be able to do it. And that's one of the reasons we're fighting so hard to advance the Countermand Amendment. We can restore this republic, but we have to do it the way the founders intended, and the founders intended for us to be a constitutional republic with each state represented in that republic as an equal. So Wyoming, with one vote as a delegate, they would only be able to send one delegate to any convention, would be equal in the voting status at the convention to California, which could send maybe 55 delegates. The point is, each state would have one vote. And when you change that arrangement around, then there's no way that the states will be able to retain their states' rights. Very, very important. Now let me give you some other ideas as to what this amendment can do before I get into my itinerary, which I'm just about to start. Congressional budgets that add $1 trillion of new debt a year can be rescinded. I want you to understand what I just said. When Harry Reid and whoever else is supporting him, Democrats mostly in the Congress, when they decide that they're going to add $1 trillion of new debt to the federal budget, 30 states under this Countermand Amendment could stop them. And 30 states could cause that law that they had passed and the president had signed, cause it to be rescinded. They would have to go back and revisit the issue. They would have to redefine what kind of a budget they want to make. And they will always have to keep in mind that the states under this Countermand Amendment have all of a sudden become partners in government, not subjects to federal mandates. So when they write the budget or any law that they put out, they will do so with the understanding that it can be rescinded. And by having it countermanded and then rescinded, they will write it in a way, by knowing that, they will write it in a way that will be more amenable to the states, so that the states are more likely to say, we will accept that budget, or we will accept that law. But if it's an onerous law or an onerous budget, and then of course the states can step in and say you went too far. Now keep in mind, in the last 6 years, we have increased our national debt by $9 trillion. That's so staggering, that number. I almost don't even know how to count to that. Even say that number, much less count to that number. $9 trillion have been added to the federal debt. There was no reason for that. We could have created wealth with free market principles had we just done it properly. But we decided to do it through borrowing. We decided to do it through stimulus, while at the same time imposing great regulations on the businesses and the industries so that they were inhibited from growing this economy. The energy industry by itself can dig us out of this hole. And they can do it so in probably 15 years our $18 trillion debt would be paid off. And at the same time we could become a credit nation one more time as the major exporter of energy around the world. Now, we could also address the Affordable Care Act. We could address any law that prohibits the free exercise of the Second Amendment. Those of you out there that are NRA supporters, those of you who understand how important it is to retain your right to a firearm, you can actually rescind through this amendment any federal law that would restrict you from having your firearm as a right rather than just as permission. You can even prevent the federal government from imposing regulations that would limit how you can use those firearms and so forth. EPA rulings, BLM rulings, that Bundy Ranch thing that recently blew up in everybody's face, that almost resulted in some kind of battle cry out there in Nevada. That would have never happened if the Countermand Amendment were in place and the federal government was put on hold as a result of 30 states saying the law under which the BLM is operating is now rescinded. What a wonderful option that is. How about the IRS? You want to do something to stop the intimidation that you get from the IRS or the DOJ? Department of Justice has its problems. The point is that all of a sudden the federal government, with this Countermand Amendment, will see the states as partners, and they won't be throwing things down their throat. Instead, they will be cooperating with them so that laws are more fair, so that they're not governed by party politics, so that they are considering the needs of the people and the state rights issues that are implicated. Now, we have had great success with our state legislators, as Mike Coons has said earlier. I mean, phenomenal success. We don't have time to be telling you about some of the problems we've had technically. Out of this year already, we have probably lost 4 months of transmission or broadcast time on this roundtable because of technical issues and problems with getting shows going and so forth. 4 months. And we didn't start until maybe March. So that means we may have had maybe 4 months at most of actual airtime with legislators coming on board. And from that, we're getting close to 100 legislators who have been part of our program. But at the same time, we have 15 states that have said legislators who have said that they will sponsor this amendment in their states. That is phenomenal. But now many of these legislators have been saying to us, can you come and visit our legislature and our legislative committees and help us to explain the importance of this amendment to other legislators so that we can assure that the vote in both the Senate and the House will in fact be to adopt the application on Congress. And remember, there are two documents. One is the application on Congress, directing Congress to convene the convention with instructions to do it within 60 days, or the states will convene their own convention so that Congress doesn't play politics with that. And since all of the applications are identical, the fact remains that Congress can't claim some ambiguity and delay it because of not having clarity. The second is the delegate resolution, which includes the text for the Countermand Amendment. And that's the document that makes the convention safe. The other reason why that delegate resolution is so important is because it prevents anyone from accusing the states of violating Article 1, Section 10, which says that the states can't have interstate compacts or agreements without the consent of Congress. Well, we want to keep Congress out of this. We don't want Congress involved. No way. We want the sovereignty of the legislatures to be exactly what it should be, and that is they do the ruling. They, as a body of legislators, they actually control the direction of this nation through Article 5. Not that they become an oligarchy of dictators. They are really there to make sure the government doesn't go too far, the federal government. So when we look at these documents, they are very well thought out. We've had a lot of input on it, some scholarship that's been into it, some legislators, some legal minds that have been put into it. The fact is that we've got some documents that make sense to protect the state sovereignty. Now, I am going to be traveling starting in the week of the 8th of December. I have put on the website, you can go there, countermands.us. In the upper right corner, you'll see a link that will go to this itinerary. Click that link on, and you'll have an introductory letter. It'll deal with my plans for travel, where I'm going to go, and also what it depends on as far as support that we get from people both out there and folks that we know. In 1787, 73 delegates were summoned to the Constitutional Convention. Only 55 actually attended. Many of the states had not provided for any travel or expense money, and this accounted for most of the absenteeism. In fact, many of the delegates who did come, including James Madison, had to borrow money for living expenses before the convention was over. That's the financial condition of the founders. Now, some of them were wealthy, but some of them were not wealthy. And as a result, they had to depend on borrowing money, many of them, who went to the convention. So George Washington, who had been invited to the convention, even though he had just accepted an invitation to a commemorative event by military folks who were trying to honor him for his service in the Revolutionary Army, what he did was, before he went to this event, he actually wound up with this information from Philadelphia. And he was asked to come to Philadelphia and to help organize the convention. Well, he didn't know what to do. His wife was seriously sick. His sister was sick. He was suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, which is why he had just got done saying to the commemorative group that he couldn't go because he was in too much pain. And now he gets this invitation, and now he has to decide if he should go and embarrass himself with those that were trying to honor him. You know what he did? He put that arm in a sling. He was suffering from pain. He got on his horse, and he went to Philadelphia. It took him a long time to get there, because I doubt if they can get 20 miles a day in. But they got to Philadelphia in pain, and when he got there, he realized that there was something very momentous that he was part of. And he then was, being the father of our nation, was in fact very instrumental in quieting all of the politically hateful things that were going on between the states, and to actually create a forum in which there was a serious discussion and they could come to some conclusions. So at another time we could talk about some of those events. So here we are, citizen initiatives. Our directors have done an incredible job. Mike Coons out in Alaska has done a tremendous job in organizing the sponsorships of these state legislators. Sandy Toth in Georgia, my executive coordinator, she actually, folks, sits in a wheelchair, and she's in pain frequently, and she has other ailments, including diabetes 1, I believe, but the fact is she is troubled. She can't even get up and walk right. And she is one of my most powerful spokespersons for this amendment. And she and I have been working together for several years now. And of course our producer, who I look at as a real dynamo, who you heard a few moments ago, she has had tremendous input in helping to keep the fervor going, so we just keep getting excited about what this can mean for all of us and how we can advance this amendment. But in the meantime, they all paid their own expenses. They didn't ask me for any money. They tried to get me money. And as a result, they did marvelously. And there were others who did the same thing. Other directors that we have in Maryland and Wisconsin and Arizona and just a whole host of states. But the fact is, they don't get paid anything because they know how important this work is, and they volunteer. Now, folks, there is one part of this where a volunteer is going to need some help. And that's why I'm talking to you about this itinerary. My schedule for traveling across the country to visit at least 45 states, maybe as many as 48, but I don't think so. The fact is, I think it'll be 45. The fact is, I start out in the week of December 8th, and I will be traveling through to the 23rd. I'll be in Concord, New Hampshire, Jackson, Mississippi, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm looking forward to that meeting. Little Rock, Arkansas. And then I'll take a few days off for the holidays. And then back on January 5th, I start out in North Dakota. Now, can you imagine going to North Dakota in January? I'm going because they've invited me. They said, we want you here to speak to our legislature. And South Dakota right after that. And then it goes on. Wyoming, Nebraska, Missouri, Oklahoma, and all the way through to all 50 or 40-some states. Now, Hawaii, we're going to leave out of the picture for a while, not because we're working with them, but I'm not going to be visiting with them. I don't have a canoe big enough to get me over there. So we now are telling you there are two ways that I can actually get this trip accomplished. And I don't mean to be pulling on your heartstrings. I'm just telling you the facts as they are. I said the first plan, in this letter I have, you can find it on the website, the first plan I have come up with, I call the covered wagon plan. Now, what is the covered wagon plan? Well, I'll be on the road for almost 5 months. And that means that I'll need traveling expenses, I need gas, I need various types of repairs to the vehicle, food, and so forth. So the covered wagon plan says, okay, I will be, because the money will not be quite sufficient for me to stay in hotels, the covered wagon plan will say, it will require that I sleep and shower at truck stops and sleep in the vehicle. Okay, I'm willing to do that. Just like George Washington was willing to go to Philadelphia with an arm in a sling, suffering with his rheumatoid arthritis. The amount of money that we need for that is about $2,900 a month and about $4,500 of initial preparation costs, which includes some personal matters dealing with the vehicle and so forth. $16,100 over 4 months. The second plan is the Patriot Plan. Maybe somebody out there can say, wow, we got to get this guy and give him some room and board in a hotel so he can rest up better. Well, if you want to do that, I need $6,000 a month. And I also would need $7,500 of initial preparation costs and about $31,500 in total over 4 months. Now, I would like you folks to think seriously about what I just told you. We are trying to reclaim our constitutional republic. Most of you in this audience are patriots. You know what's at stake. You've not had an answer as to how to address the problems. You've only been able to complain. Now you have a chance not to complain, but to make something happen that will restore our constitutional republic. But we need your help. Go to countermands.us. There's a donation button on the right top part of the screen. Make a generous donation. You can also click on a recurring monthly button that will allow, or box that will allow you to say, I'm going to give this month, this much every month, to support citizen initiatives and this Countermand Amendment. I would be most grateful if you did that. Don't think that you have the option of letting someone else take care of it for you. This is your battle. We're fighting it as best we can, but we can't do it alone. And we need support. So please go to the website, countermands.us, and make a donation. In addition, make another donation. On the left, in the navigation bar, you will see my new book, countermands.us, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle. It should be done in about 2 weeks. However, in order to help fund this itinerary, go to the website, click the link. Through PayPal, you'll be able to place your order, and we then will send you a personal autographed copy that I believe in time, because we are making history, will become a very valuable part of your library. So I would like you very much to take what I am saying seriously. I will not beg you. If you want me to beg you, forget it. I'll go on a bicycle. But at the same time, if you want to restore this Constitution, we have the answer now. We didn't have it a little while ago, but we have it now. It's time, and we can actually claim victory if we just go in a proper way to the legislatures to help them into getting this amendment ratified.
Hello?
Yes, I am here.
This is Senator Scott Hammond from Nevada. Can you hear me?
I can, Scott, and I tell you, we're still on just put your phone on mute for a few moments. We're going to go to break shortly, and then after that, we will have you come on, and we will have a good discussion with you. But right now, we're just finishing up the first hour. First half.
Okay,
yeah, just put it on mute.
Good. I'll put on mute.
Charles?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you. Okay. I cut myself off because of that interruption by mistake. Folks, I want you to go to the website, countermands.us, make your donation, and start supporting us. It's time. And I want you to realize that this is for the purpose of restoring our constitutional republic. Remember, once this amendment is convened, we need 34 states that will make application on Congress. But the convention itself could be convened and completed in 7 days because of the delegate resolution. In addition to that, when we go to the convention, We don't need 60% of the state legislatures or 60% of the state delegations voting in favor. We need 51, because all of that has been predetermined in the delegate resolution, along with the pre-approved text, so that the convention doesn't have any mayhem. So the state legislatures, the sovereign body under this republic, decide how that convention is to be convened. And consider this simple fact. When some of our great religious organizations and sometimes even on commercial groups, when they have a convention, they invite delegates to come, especially in the church areas. And they invite delegates to come. But the delegates don't go to tell the leaders of that denomination what to do. What they do is they vote on whether what is being proposed is to be approved or not. They don't go to tell them what the agenda is, because in that case, the leaders of that denomination are the sovereign body. Well, the same thing is true for the state legislatures. We have to get them to understand that. Article 5 makes them sovereign. Under Article 5, sovereignty is for proposing amendments, not to create a new constitution. It's the same sovereignty that the nation-states had under the Articles of Confederation, and they passed down to the states in Article 5. At another time, again, we can talk about that in detail and why that was so important. But folks, we've got a chance now to see this nation restored. And we're going to have another guest coming, a guest for tonight, not another guest, but a guest coming on in just a short while. His name is Senator Scott Hammond. After the break, we will introduce him and explain some of his distinguished service that he's involved with. But right now, we have to take a break for station identification and also hear from our CPR sponsors. And I would like you to go to countermands.us. This program, the State Legislators Roundtable, can be heard at 9 p.m. on Fridays and 8 p.m. Eastern Time on, 9 p.m. Tuesdays, and on Fridays 8 p.m. at cprworldwidemedia.com/live-radio. Go to countermands.us, and if you want to communicate with us, tell us how you can help us beyond donations, do that. We would love to hear from you. And I'm turning it back over now to our National Director for about a minute. Mike, why don't you go ahead and share what's on your mind?
You said it all, Charles. I'm really looking forward to seeing, hearing what Senator Hammond has to say and to share. I'm sure this next hour is going to be really positive, and do hope that Nevada becomes the 16th state to sponsor.
Yes, I do too, and I'm looking forward to it. Also, I've been reading some of Senator Hammond's bio, and I'm impressed with what he's been doing and how hard he's been working in Nevada, and I'm looking forward to talking with him directly.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet. Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media. This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max Hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
The Ouija board has existed for centuries. It is used to communicate with the dead.
If there's a presence here, please make yourself known. This is a joke. Oh my God. It's not even real, okay?
Ouija.
We're saying goodbye!
Rated PG-13.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks, to the State Legislators Roundtable. I am Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. These roundtable discussions are with state legislators and community leaders and center around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of them safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum. We are not here to back our guests into a corner. We encourage serious discussions of issues important to our guests and their states. And subjects can include taxation, criminal law, energy policies, health care, social issues, federal land grabs, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, EPA, BLM, IRS, and much more. You will learn how to protect your enumerated rights in the Constitution and how the states and their citizens can identify, define, and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendments peacefully and permanently, Now we have a special guest that we're going to introduce. His name is Senator Scott Hammond from the great state of Nevada. Mr. Hammond has served in his state in the Nevada Assembly and in the Nevada Senate. He has extensive history in legislation and dealing with very important issues that deal with the citizens of Nevada. He is a founding member of the Somerset Academy of Las Vegas. Honors and rewards he has received many. Educator of the Year, Indian Springs High School, and 2001 and 2002. Here's a statement. Job creation. As your state senator, I will continue to sponsor and support legislation that encourages small business growth. Small businesses make up the majority of our state's jobs. Our economic comeback begins with their success. I will roll back spending, cut taxes, and provide Nevada with a sound economical footing that will motivate job growth. Folks, you guys in his district in Nevada, I want you to hear what he's saying because he is on your side. As an educator, he has many state interests that he is trying to advance in the state of Nevada to give quality educations to the citizen and their children. He's for limited government, and there's a paragraph that I can read here, but I think at this point you get the idea. He's a man who really is after our own heart. So what I would like to do is introduce Senator Scott Hammond from Nevada. And Senator, please share with us whatever you want, and as it relates to encroachment by the federal government will be most welcome, but you are free to discuss issues as you would like to present them. And thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much. First, I just want to extend a thankful appreciation to everybody who has asked me to come on the program, to Mr. Mike Coons, who's called me repeatedly and asked me to be on. I did have the privilege of meeting your representative, Mr. I think he's State Senator Dunleavy. We got to talking. I think we were in Salt Lake City this past summer, and as he was explaining to me some of the areas that he represented in Alaska, I realized that he actually represents my old stomping grounds at my old high school, Delta Junction, Alaska, where I grew up there. Was up there for several years until I moved a little bit further south so I can enjoy the nice warm weather. I hate to tell everybody up there that right now I'm outside and there's no snow on the ground, and my teeth aren't even chattering. And
yes.
So all you guys who are telling me what a nice summer you guys had this past summer, I'll just let you guys know that I'm thinking about playing golf this Saturday.
Well, we don't, Senator, we don't have any snow either. We just got our first dusting today.
They're just shivering. They're just shivering.
Well, I'm sure that people in Delta have some snow, so I can still brag about that. But, I'm glad you guys had me and invited me on the program. There's a lot to discuss. We have felt this for many years, continue to feel it, the encroachment of the federal government in many areas. And, of course, recently you feel more and more encroachment even in the area of education with, the state standards coming online, the Common Core. So you feel that encroachment as well. A lot of carrot and stick approaches to getting people to do what they want, getting state legislatures or at least executive branch officers to do what the federal government wants. Here in Nevada, we've had our share of rebellions against the federal government, the Sagebrush Rebellion back in the 70s. Just recently, we also had a couple other worthwhile and newsworthy events in the state of Nevada this past summer. With Mr. Bundy up in Mesquite, Nevada. So we kind of see the involvement of the federal government. And I'll tell you, we've also just seen, and this is something you might want to, enlighten everybody or myself about. But we recently had an interim committee meeting where they discussed the potential of turning over more of the land that's federally controlled to the states. And in our state, I think it would be a huge boon to our economy, especially for education. When you turn over a little bit more of the federally controlled land to the states and let the states manage it, and then be able to sell it off and then start collecting some of the revenue from that and then give it to education, I think that would be huge for our state, and that's one area I like to see. And of course, we've had people talk about that recently. It went nowhere in the interim because we had the committee chair who decided that did not need to be brought before the legislature, but that individual did not get past the elections on November 4th, so we won't hear from him. But your comment on that, please. Let me know how you feel about that turnover of the federal government, the turnover of the federally controlled lands back to the states.
Yes, well, we have a plan. Of course, the first is to get the Countermand Amendment ratified. And I don't know if you had a chance to read the Countermand Amendment, but I'd like to read to the audience 2 sections, and this way we'll have a better understanding of what it can do for the state legislatures. Section 1 says, the article restores state sovereignty in our constitutional republic by providing state legislatures countermand authority. Section 2. State legislatures in the several states shall have the authority to countermand and rescind any congressional statute, judicial decision, executive order, treaty, government agency's regulatory ruling, or any other government or non-government mandate, including excessive spending and credit, imposed on them when, in the opinion of 60% of the state legislatures, the law or ruling adversely affects their state's interests. When the countermand threshold has been reached, the law or ruling shall be immediately and automatically nullified and repealed. this countermand authority shall also apply to existing laws and rulings. So in the case of the Bundy Ranch deal, although that was based on the BLM going after an individual, but it was on Nevada land, and even though they backed off and they didn't allow bullets to fly, the fact remains that if the states had countermanded the law that allowed BLM to do what they were doing, that would have never happened. Because there was a sense of nullification that Bundy was exercising in pushing the federal government back, but he didn't, and he wasn't able to rescind the law that gave the BLM agency the power to do what they were doing. So under the BLM rulings, they could come back in 6 months and say, okay, let's do it all over again. Now you owe us $3 million, Mr. Bundy, not $2 million. And now it just goes on and on and on. But if that law had been countermanded, there wouldn't be any force in the BLM law, because it would have been rescinded and it wouldn't even be on the books and they couldn't come back anymore. So the other thing about the Countermand Amendment, Senator, is this, that it gives the state legislatures a wonderful opportunity to define and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendment. So we hear a lot about nullification. We hear how nullification can be used to push back the federal government. And although I am not in favor of the way it's presented, I'm not against nullification. I just don't like the fact that nullification doesn't solve anything. It just postpones it. So the government can enforce whatever they're enforcing because all they did is push it back. Now you've got one state against the federal government. But with the Countermand Amendment, you've got 30 states that say to the federal government, you went too far. And therefore, your law is now rescinded. You can no longer bother us with the application of that. Now, that can be with education issues. It can be with land grabs. I'd love to see Nevada reclaim some of that 88% of the land that it's lost to the control of the federal government. It could be with healthcare issues, with especially Obamacare and so forth. There are a whole host of areas that it can apply to. How about the IRS? The IRS is a real problem for upsetting the lives of so many Americans based on laws Congress enforced, and then the IRS has created new regulations that become laws in themselves. So have the EPA. Energy production can be altered, and and natural resources in America, energy resources can be protected with the Countermand Amendment. So there's a whole host of possibilities, but most important, and I'll go back to you in a moment, most important, sir, is that with the Countermand Amendment, we actually can restore our constitutional republic so that the state legislatures retain their sovereign deliberative status and can redefine the direction of this nation as a republic rather than as federal mandates that they don't know how to respond to. Okay, sir, you feel free to share as you'd like to.
Well, here's a question for you, and maybe other in your audience, but obviously your audience has been talking about this for a while, and they perhaps know a little bit more than I do. But the question is, let's say there is an act that comes out of Congress, and it's particularly egregious to a state, and so they start the process to countermand that act. And what is the limitation? How long do the states have to act to countermand? Is it an open period of it takes 30 states to counteract or countermand that act? What time period are they looking to in order to countermand? Is it a year? Is it a year and a half? Is it 6 months? What is that open period?
You're right. That's a good question. Mike, why don't you answer that for the senator?
Yeah, it's in Section 3 is where we do a 18 month. The reason we went 18 months was because we also realized that like Nevada and Texas, you're only in session every other year. And our understanding is a lot of those states are only in session for a few months in that time frame. So we believe that can be done in that 18-month time frame. And more importantly, we're not here. The purpose of this Countermand Amendment isn't so much as to take away the powers of the federal government, because there are enumerated powers in the Constitution for the federal government. But this is so that the states can look at an issue, work it out, and if it isn't something enough that the states can come to an agreement on at 30, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to countermand that particular law, rule, or regulation. But then again, 2-3 years down the line, maybe there's a better reason for it. Maybe there's more states that are finding that particular law egregious, and now you'll have 30 states. They can always come back and try to reinstate that, but it still has that 18-month threshold. I hope. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it does. That's exactly what I was asking. And here's another one that it kind of came to my top of my mind. Those who would say that the countermand is not necessary because don't we already send representatives who are supposedly representing your state, right? What would you say to that argument? It's unnecessary because you already have that. So what would be the argument then for those who make that claim?
You're talking
go
about
ahead, Charles. Go ahead and take that one, Charles.
You're talking about representatives for Congress?
That's correct. So we send 2 senators from every state and a number of representatives according to population. And, of course, they're supposed to represent our state. Right. They represent the demographics. They represent the people. They're part of the people. And so, they're the ones who, they're casting their ballot. And believe me, I'm not saying that always happens, but there's going to be somebody who makes an argument that we already get representation. We vote for them.
Well, you may have representation, but not always proper representation. Recently, with Congress, every state had 2 senators, but the majority of 55 or so percent of the senators controlled everything. So there was no representation for the other 45%. And therefore, even everything that went on the floor was based on whatever this other group decided, that is, the other 55% group. And the same thing is true to some degree for the House. Now, the problem is everything has been politicized so badly in Congress and elsewhere in the federal government, even in the Bureau, in the agencies that are operating under mandates from Congress. Everything is so politicized that all of a sudden the states and their citizens have lost proper representation. There is no friendly atmosphere in Congress anymore whereby you can come up with conclusions and solutions to problems based on honor and based on truth and based on the Republican government and so forth. It's all based on some political advantage that they want to have over the other side, and the outcome is the citizens are losers. So with the Countermand Amendment, what happens is they can continue playing their politics. They can continue saying that what they're doing is representing the people and so forth and so on, and some of them are. I'm not negating all of them. But at the same time, they will be aware that any law they pass or any directive they make or agency that they set up or any mandate that they require, whether it be from the federal Congress or the executive branch, even Supreme Court ruling, it will be done with the understanding under the Countermand Amendment that the states are partners in government. They're not subjects that are going to have to obey federal mandates without any say in the matter. And so with the Countermand Amendment, when they write a law, they're going to sit back and whether it's Congress or somewhere, but let's say Congress, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, this thing can be countermanded with just 30 states. We better make sure that it's amenable to the states, and so that they feel like it's a law that's for their good as well. That makes you a partner in government, not subjects to federal mandates. Does that help?
Well, that was very well said. No, I see what you're saying, and I think that it's a good argument. It kind of goes back to the way the status quo was before we changed the representation of a U.S. senator, or I'm sorry, I don't want to say the...
Yeah, you're right, U.S. senators under the 17th Amendment.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Of course, the U.S. senators used to be chosen by the states, and so the states then had a little bit more of a say in governing, or at least they had to check to make sure that the state legislatures were in agreement. So does it, in your mind, does it kind of go back and to that time period and kind of give more weight to the states than they currently have?
Senator Hammond,
Can I take that, Charles?
Let me, just a moment. Senator Hammond, it absolutely does, and I'll let Mike add to it in a moment, but the fact is that two issues are settled with the counterman in ways that had never been dreamed of before. One is nullification, because it now isn't a nullified law, it's a rescinded law. And two is the idea that the states lost the ability to send two senators that the legislatures appointed. That is regained now, because now the legislatures control the Senate through the Countermand Amendment, as well as the House. And they actually have an influence on the direction of their decisions. Now, you'll notice that we required, and the legislators and the legal minds who have helped us put this thing together, we require 60% of the states before a rescission happens. Why? Because the federal government has a legitimate role. It's not to be pushed out of business. And we don't want an oligarchy of states, like, let's say we would have said 25% of the states, and it's a rescinded law. Well, you can see nothing but trouble with that, and the federal government would be impotent again, just like it was under the Articles of Confederation, where there was a unanimous vote requirement to amend the Articles. So with 60%, you have a legitimate, reasonable percentage where even the losing states can sit back and say, well, look, I think that enough states went for this countermand, and even though we didn't countermand, the fact remains that we can live with the fact that 60% thought that it was a law that should be rescinded. On top of that, the other states that lost will be able to say, wait a minute, we can also use this countermand amendment for our advantage to deal with issues that maybe those 30 states didn't unanimously agree, have problems with. You know, we had on the show here a couple of three representatives from New Hampshire. And I learned something that night that really impressed me. Here I'm thinking that the western states were primarily concerned with land grabs by the federal government. And I'm sitting back and I'm saying, well, now how are we going to get 30 states that would countermand a particular law that prevents them from retaining control over their state? Well, we learned from one of the representatives that in the little state of New Hampshire, 20% of New Hampshire is controlled by the federal government. And I sat back, I said, wow, I had no idea. And you see, the states will learn how to use this tool. And I'll tell you about the National Strategy Committee in a moment, but they will learn how to use it and how to cooperate with one another in a way where the 30 can be attained, and yet at the same time not damage the federal government so it can't perform its legitimate role. Does that help any, Senator?
Yes, absolutely. That's great information for myself and everybody else. Mike, do you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. Are you? Well, you probably run into the same thing that we run into. You're having your legislative session, and you get a congressman or some congressmen coming down, and they want to talk to they stand in front of the legislature and tell you what they've been doing down in Washington, D.C. Or in your case, you got what I like to call the anarchist Prince Harry Reid that will come down and from Lord on high, and I'm from the Senate, I'm Senator Reid, and this is what we're doing. And I'm being a little facetious on that, but we get the same problem here with Lisa Murkowski and Mark Begich. They come in to the legislature thinking that they are superior to the legislature. And what the reality is, and they have completely forgotten or don't want to acknowledge, is that the states are the ones that develop them. And if anybody comes in with hat in hand, it should be them coming to you, standing in front of you and saying, this is what we've been doing in Washington, D.C. we want your input. We want your thoughts. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Instead of saying we're bigger, badder than than you guys are. And I think it just infuriates me when I see I'm Senator so and so, and I actually had a senator do that to me one time, and I went, no, Ted, I'm your employer, and the employer calls the employee by his first name, and it's Mr. Coons to you. And he didn't appreciate that because he was a sitting U.S. senator. But that's what this thing does, because this countermand amendment then brings you, the state legislatures, back into this thing, as Charles said, as partners. But yet it brings these guys back to the point that maybe we need to talk to our state legislature about this bill before we start pushing it, because there's some issues with it that I think we need to maybe talk with them and get their input on before we do it. And so that was kind of my point on that.
All right, we have 2 minutes. I have to take most of it, but Senator, if you want to respond before we go to our bottom of the hour break, please do.
No, actually, I don't want to respond to that particular question. I'm just going to throw another one out to you, that if we need to go to a break, I can wait until after the break.
Well, why don't you go ahead and throw the question out? It'll give us a chance to think about it. I have another minute or two before I have to have my closing statement for the break.
Okay, well, this concerns sort of the content of the countermand amendment here. It acts on anything coming out of Congress or anything coming from the president's desk. But sometimes the president's desk, they sign bills and then direct agencies to then act. Is there a provision in there that would allow us to look at a policy coming out of a certain agency like the IRS or the wildlife, or what am I thinking? Anything.
I understand. We can address
Bureau
that.
of Land Management. Okay.
We will be able to address that in a couple of minutes, or a few minutes. And we're going to go to break here in a moment. State Legislator Roundtable can be heard on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. on cprworldwidemedia.com/live-radio. You can learn more about the Countermand Amendment by going to countermands.us. You can also order an autographed copy of my new book, Countermand, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle, by going to that website, countermands.us. We have to take a short break for a station.
Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
You know what happens when we take away the late fees and penalty rate? No one misses them. The City Simplicity Card is the only card that never has late fees, a penalty rate, or an annual fee. Ever. Go to city.com/simplicity to apply.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
The Ouija board has existed for centuries. It is used to communicate with the dead.
If there's a presence here, please make yourself known. This is a joke. Oh my God. It's not even real, okay?
Ouija.
We're saying goodbye!
Rated PG-13.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Charles?
I will try. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Senator, I will try to address that matter of what happens with policies, not just laws and rulings. I don't know that I have a perfect answer for that, but I'll give you the one I'm thinking. Welcome back, folks, and thank you for staying with us. This is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We have a very special guest tonight by the name of Senator Scott Hammond from the great state of Nevada. He has a distinguished career, and he is adding immensely to the program that we're conducting and asking questions that are very, very poignant and important for the audience as well as the legislators to understand. Now, if I understood correctly, Senator, you were asking, can the Countermand Amendment be used to address policy positions by the executive? Is that what I understood?
Correct. And if we want to take it a step further, one of his agencies, like the Bureau of Land Management, says this is going to be our policy from here on out. Would the Countermand Amendment be able to challenge policy coming from the executive branch or the executive branch agency?
Well, I think that it probably could, given it would be a governmental directive to their members in that agency. But I think the better way of looking at it would be to realize that the authority that they had to decide that policy can be challenged. And so as a result, whatever law or ruling is actually allowing them to make a policy that is going in the wrong direction from the state's perspective, that can be challenged. As far as the policy itself, if it's a directive that's going to affect the states in any way, yes, it can be challenged and rescinded.
Fair enough. I understand that because you're trying to get back to the root of that policy. Where did it come from? It stemmed from the act that allowed that policy to be passed. So you're really attacking at the root. What have you addressed or thought about? Recently we've seen the president decide that he wanted to use executive power. The signature of the president doing an executive order. Does this address in any way the executive order? Because that is something that is an enumerated right of the president, if I'm not mistaken.
It does indeed. As a matter of fact, this recent executive order that has allowed 5 million illegal immigrants to become legal residents in one fashion or another can be rescinded with this. Actually, I think that'll be one of the first things that the states will address. And remember, we only need 30 to rescind that executive order. And there are 30 states out there that are being hurt by illegal immigration. So I think we've got that one in the bag. You want to know the truth.
Now, with a year and a half to do that, there's a lot that could happen during that year and a half. Do you have to put like a stay of execution on that order or the executive order before it's fully implemented in order for the states to then have their say, so that you don't have to retract anything later on?
What we have in the works is a national strategy committee, and we have many legislators who have already agreed to become members of that committee. We have citizens with a steering committee and legislators helping us to identify, well, first to get this amendment through, but secondly, once it's ratified, and we hope it'll be done in 2016, that's our expectation, we will be able through the National Strategy Committee to identify the laws and rulings that are onerous to the states. That's the first thing. Second, we'll be able to decide in what priority they should fall. So if it's land grabs, which seems to be about the most important issue that our legislators have been addressing in the last few months, the fact is that if it's land grabs, then that will be the one that we will, as citizen initiatives, be introducing to the states to be countermanded. And now the reason why we're doing it this way is we want to avoid Article 1, Section 10, where the states are accused of having a compact between themselves. We want to avoid that in any way we can. And the reason, again, we want the state legislatures to be sovereign, not Congress, not the courts, not the executive branch. We don't want you guys to surrender anything that you have in Article 5. And you can actually, and if you do it one amendment at a time, one single issue amendment at a time, you can have multiple conventions going, multiple applications for conventions going forward at the same time. That's not an issue. But at the same time, if you go to the convention with just one issue, wow, you can actually get that thing done in 7 days, and it can be safe, and there's no mayhem, because you and your delegates know exactly what's going to be done. If a delegate steps out of line, the provisions in the delegate resolution pulls them back immediately. You can also add penalties to him. You can say, look, if you do such and such, you can actually be charged with some criminal statute or not civil, but criminal statute. And the fact is that you can have control over that delegate in that sense. But you see, there's a big misunderstanding, and I guess I should address this right now. There's a big misunderstanding about who a delegate is under Article 5. We're the only group, citizen initiatives, that makes this clear, distinct statement. Delegates under Article 5 are not equivalent to the delegates at the Constitutional Convention, who were our founders. They're not the same thing. The delegates under Article 5 are sent to a convention by their state legislatures for the purpose of the amendment is being approved by the state legislatures before they go. It's in this delegate resolution, and they go to the convention as ambassadors, representing their legislatures, not to create a new document. This is very important. But the moment that you let them go to decide what's going to be done at the convention, as some of the other Article 5 groups are proposing, you guys lose sovereignty. And you set a terrible precedent for future generations of legislators who will, I think, have great difficulty in controlling future conventions and in addressing amendment issues in a safe way, because the precedent will have been set. But right now you can control it, and you can control it safely and still get the job done so that your citizens get the great benefit. That's what we have.
Right, I think you hit an important part. That is a concern that weighs heavily on many people when they discuss having an Article 5 convention. They worry about the direction. They worry about who controls it. They worry about maybe mayhem occurring during that convention. So I think you're hitting upon a very important part, at least for me and my constituents in this area. They would want to make sure that there's some protections there.
Absolutely, and we would agree with you and your constituents because of that. There is a way of understanding this that may help to bring some light to this issue of what a delegate is. If I can just put my thoughts together here for a moment, I had it and I lost it. But it has to do with calling this convention and then deciding how it's to be conducted. And if in fact the legislatures see themselves as kind of fitting into the Article 5 process rather than being in control of it, then the legislatures will lose control at the convention of their delegates. If they control their delegates in the way that we're proposing, it can be done in a safe way. And then finally, when you look at the Article 5, which is for proposing amendments, not for creating a new constitution, you have to ask yourself, well, why did the legislatures do that in 1787? They did it so that you guys today will have a safe way of pulling government back when they step too far, protecting civil liberties in your states and your states' rights, and not destroy the Constitution. You see, they wanted this Constitution, as we do, to be the supreme law of the land. They also wanted it to be the perpetual law of the land. They didn't want it to be altered and changed by the whim of certain political groups that come down the pike as a result of problems that develop over the decades. They wanted it to be the central focus. That's why it's proposing amendments. Now, if the state legislatures decided that they did want to create a new document, this is how they would have to do it. They would have to secede from the Union. They would have to call their own convention. They would have to create their own document and form their own government. And the Article 5 amendment would not permit them to do that, because it was not the purpose of Article 5 for the legislatures to do that. Now, it is true, if you decided to call for an amendment that was for the purpose of altering Article 5 as a specific single issue, you could do that. But I don't think you'll ever want to do it, because you won't need to, in light of the fact that the Countermand Amendment will give you everything you want anyway and make you to be equal partners in government. Does that help?
It does. It does help out. Now, aside from Senator Dunleavy up there, who else is sponsoring this up in Alaska?
Sir, what we're going to do is refrain from giving you names. And the reason is...
Oh, okay.
You know, and I'll tell you why. It's not because we don't want to. We just want to protect them.
No problem. I just met a lot of good legislators from up there, and I really respect a lot of them.
Mike has told me just recently, I think we have 11 right now up in Alaska as co-sponsors. So there are a lot of people, and we haven't talked to a lot of them. I would say about 95% of those who we talked to have agreed to sponsor the amendment.
I just wanted to. Well, there was a good segue. For me, I was thinking about those that I've met, and hopefully segue into saying hello to them over the air here. But I tell you,
privately, sir, he'll give you those names, and you can contact with as you wish. But we want to protect our legislators as much as possible, because there are people out there that don't like what we're doing.
Well, I don't know where this particular person stands on the issue, but I thought I'd at least like to say hello to, I believe it was Shelley Hughes, Representative Hughes.
Yes.
I met her last year in Colorado, a great representative of the state.
Mike, did you want to say something about Shelley?
Shelley Hughes is my representative. She just whooped the Democrat that ran against her 70-30. And she is working very, very closely with me on this. Charles, I know Shelley. So what I'm saying is not going to hurt her at all. She is sponsoring for the state of Alaska for the House.
Well,
she's a stand-up lady, and I will definitely tell her I will let her know that the kind words that you said and you asked about her.
I appreciate that. I think she is a great representative, works hard. I had a very good time meeting her when she was down here at a function, and just respect her a lot.
Hey, Charles?
I don't want to have I'm here. Did you want to say something else, Mike?
Yeah, I like to get a couple issues that I would like to bring up to Senator Hammond. I just got this today. There's an executive order 13563. The secretary. This has to do with the Department of Education. The secretary will amend the regulations governing Title I, Part A of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 to phase out the authority of states to define modified academic achievement standards and develop alternate assessments based on those modified academic achievement standards in order to satisfy ESEA accountability requirements, end quote. That kind of goes back to your question on regulatory. Can the Countermand Amendment repeal or rescind those type of things? Yes, that's where we can get 30 states to say no. The Department of Education is not going to take over the standards and take over testing or whatever. We can rescind that. So that's a big one. And then as to your question on, what states do while we're waiting for those 30 states? It could either, one of the things I was thinking of that came to mind was a governor could then turn around and file suit against the federal government and call for a stay because these states are in the process of doing this. And I think with this process, with this Countermand Amendment, when we start really using it, the courts are going to even look at that and say, wait a minute, we have 10 states that are really concerned about this, that are countermanding this in the process, and if we threw in a legal request for a stay on that particular rule, regulation, executive order, whatever, then the courts might be more amenable to that, to determine if those states actually do come together with that 30 state threshold, and then that way you could stop long-term damage until while we're waiting for it to get fixed. Does that kind of answer that question a little bit?
Actually, yeah, it was a very enlightening answer, because in that particular example you gave was a very important example to me with the education, especially the Elementary Education Act and the renewal of it. I think it's very timely, actually, because it does. And of course, all that's coming from the education department right now. So very good job on that.
Now, let's add to the conversation this thought. Whether it be through citizen initiatives directly and or through this National Strategy Committee, once that a particular law or ruling or executive order is decided on, and the committee now, with the input from the state legislature, says we want to get this into the states for the purpose of asking them to countermand it, because we don't have the authority. Citizen Initiatives is not claiming any authority in this whole affair. We simply feel like we're giving the legislators a tool that will allow them to exercise their sovereign authority effectively, which up until now they've had difficulty understanding, much less applying. But at the same time, by applying the Countermand Amendment in the way that we're proposing it, the states will be able to address issues within a short period of time, because once it's decided at the National Strategy Committee level and the go is given, and then you go to the states, our directors would go to the states to avoid Article 1 so that the legislators don't get implicated in Article 1. At any rate, when they go to the states and start the process and the first state's countermand, well, guess what? We're already in 30 states to start looking at it. We're in 50 states to countermand that one initiative. And therefore, we probably will be able to get some of these countermands done, 30 of them, probably in a few weeks, not 18 months, you see. And that's why this is so important, because the other groups that are advancing some ideas as to what a convention can do, and I'm not going to be talking about them by name, but the fact is that they're talking about delegates going to the convention to decide the issues and decide what the problems are, and then to decide what the amendment ought to be to address the problems. Now, can you imagine maybe as many as 534 delegates from the states summoned, politically charged delegates summoned to a convention to decide if it's going to be a Republican form of government? That has to be decided all over again, just like in the Constitutional Convention it was. Or if it's going to be a majority vote, or if it's going to be a Republican form of government where every state delegation has one vote. You see, they would have to decide all of that. And can you imagine 55 delegates coming from California and 40 coming from New York and Illinois and so forth, coming to a convention, and here comes little lonely Wyoming, and they only have one delegate. Who's going to win that battle? That's why the delegate resolution is so critical. It gives the state legislatures a way to protect their Republican form of government, so we don't lose one vote per state at the convention or in any other way. Back to you, Senator.
Well, I'm running out of questions to ask. I think you guys have done a great job. Is there anything else I need to know that you guys feel like I from the line of questioning that maybe I've got a hole in there somewhere that you feel like I need to know some more.
Well, no, you've been a great guest, sir, and I'm grateful to you. Sandy, do you want to make a comment to the senator?
One of the things that objections and talk that goes around is the idea that, and there's one group really pushing, the delegates are going to write the amendments. That the states send the delegates over, and they may try to limit them in some way, but the delegates will write the amendments. One of the interesting topics came up to me that I heard recently in the news is that's one of the problems we have with the federal government. Congress has given so much power to these federal agencies to write all these regulations when, in reality, Congress is just giving up their own responsibility, and they should be overseeing the writing. We would not have so many problems if they did their job. And it's the same thing with writing the amendments. The state legislators need to have them pre-approved because their input needs to be there. In fact, if you look at Article 5, it's sort of implied that the state legislators propose the amendments. Well, you have to have an amendment to propose. You know, you just can't send delegates there and have all these people get together and fight about everything and then try to come up with some kind of amendment. For example, the Countermand really took months to write because we got so much input and we sat back and we decided we were going to do it the right way. So if you put that kind of constraint, onto the delegates, you say, okay, give them a month for a convention. Well, what are you going to come out with it at the end? And that's why we consider it so important for the states to pre-approve the amendments before they go to the convention. Let the delegates do the voting or any little fine-tuning, but it's important that the legislators retain their sovereignty and take care of writing the amendments.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, you got 1 minute before I have to start my close.
I'll make this real short and sweet. I'll thank you so much, Senator Hammond, and we will definitely be talking after this to I'll be able to give you some of that information that you wanted a little bit more, and we'll be talking to you further on and show you and give you all the support you can possibly get.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And before I run out of time, I want to send a shout out to my former government teacher and history teacher, Mr. and Mrs. Heinbockel, down in Delta Junction, Alaska.
Senator, you still have at least a minute or two, so you can send out that salute to anybody you want, and I'll give you that minute at the end. I take about 2 minutes at the end of every show to have a short prayer, and then we close. So we're not at that point yet, but we're getting close. So you feel free to share what else you want, and maybe you don't have anything else to share, but whatever it is, you've got some time if you want.
Well, I do appreciate the invitation to come on here. It's been great. Always good to learn. Knowledge is important to me. I love learning. But when the invitation came to speak on this radio program and knowing that it's going back up to Alaska, and I believe you guys are doing this out of Palmer, a lot of memories being up there. Recently, my wife and I adopted a child from Alaska about 3 years ago. She'll be 4 in May. So we still have a huge connection to the state of Alaska. Just a lot of fond memories of going up there. I played basketball up there, and so I played basketball in Palmer. I played in Wasilla. I played in Barrow, Alaska. I played in Valdez and Cordova and all these places. And so to me, it's always a pleasure to talk to people from up there.
Well, it always seems to me like a foreign country, and that's because I'm down here in North Carolina. But the fact is, I'm looking forward to visiting Alaska at some point in the near future. Okay, I have a few announcements to make before we close this program. First of which is, I definitely thank you, Senator, for being our guest tonight. We've had a delightful time. We've had a little humor. We've had some serious moments, and at the same time, we've been able to discuss issues that are important to you in your state of Nevada as they affect, even adversely affect the citizens, especially in your district. I think those in your district ought to be quite, pleased to know that you have this kind of interest in their well-being and that you are endeavoring to find answers that many legislatures may not. And you are trying to find good answers to help their state. Now, I want to announce to the audience that right after this show, there will be another show called the DJ Paul Carpenter Show. I invite you to attend. You'll find it to be inspiring, and I think that you will also learn some things about how these kinds of talk shows can actually go forward. It will be live. Also, I encourage you to listen at 7 p.m. 4 days a week to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show. That's with Z Wright and you will find, and Jose, and you will find that to be a delightful, informative show that will allow a discussion on issues in a penetrating way that you probably haven't heard before. And then on top of that, I would also ask you to go to, I am sorry, I did lose the name of that next show. And Right Side Patriots with Craig Andreessen and Diane Sori. And I know both of them, and they are excellent hosts for that program, and they have much delightful information and insightful information. Now, I'm going to close with a short prayer, if I can stop coughing, and we'll honor the Lord with this program and ask Him to give us direction. Lord, thank you for the time we spent here with Senator Hammond. It's been a delightful evening. I am grateful that there are so many legislators who realize the importance of our work and are interested and willing to learn and even to find ways to help. And so I ask you to meet this man's need, his wife, his children, God, his work that he does in Nevada. May he see your blessing and provisions in every way that are needed. Also for us, Lord, the work you've given us here is enormously important. And the reason being is because if we lose this Constitution, we will actually lose the ability to restore our constitutional republic. I pray that you'll give us the resources, the people, the support, that you'll give us the assistance and the presence of mind even, the health to get this job done so we can get to ratification.